I haven't spoken to you for a little while, Ken. It's good to
Yeah,
good to
no,
hear your voice.
yeah, no, it is. It is great. I'm actually looking forward to hopefully seeing you here coming up in Istanbul if everything kind of stays on track. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
uh,
definitely.
but for those that are kind of expecting Jasper this week, I guess shout out to Jasper and wishing him the best of luck. I think he's got some medical exams this week, so hopefully he's studying and doing well on those.
Yeah, a bit of a shuffle week for both host and guest, or in this case, lack thereof. We do have a few lined up for the following events, for the following weeks, and of course, I will be reporting live at some point from Istanbul. I guess maybe with you again, Ken, if you have some time. But
Yeah,
yeah, for this call, it'll just be pretty straightforward. Walk through the bi-weekly update, which is out on Medium, of course, and can also be found from the protocol channel in Discord. There's a little bit to talk about, a couple of interesting developments. So I'll hand over to you, Ken, and you can chat with Langers for the first couple, and then I'll pop back on towards the end. We can go through some of these integrations and media slash marketing topics.
yeah. Let's start with it and go through it. This is usually Jasper's forte on it, but I always enjoy doing the the biweekly update because it always seems like there's just tremendous amount going on. And I think to start us off here, we have some of the growth numbers for it. The RE supply continues to grow up about 0.3%, which puts it on track for an annualized growth of 7%. The mini pools continue to grow up this past 2 week period of 0.2%, now totaling at 25,098 mini pools. Quite an impressive number that has it at about a 6% growth rate. And last but not least, the node operator count continues to increase up to 3,296, which is a growth of about 0.6%, which has an annualized growth of about 16%. And what I think I found very surprising about this, these numbers always continue to grow, which is interesting in regards to two things. One, we've seen some other staking protocols begin to kind of either drift downwards, or the rate of staking has maybe continued to plateau a little bit here, with now the exit queues and entrance queues being pretty close to zero. And Langer, since you're on, I was kind of interested on your take of it. What do we read about these kind of growth numbers, especially in kind of light of a bear market? What's your take on these?
Yeah, I think contract. There's been kind of like contraction across DeFi in general. If you look at like DeFi Llama, there's kind of funds being flown, or not flown, kind of like sucked out of crypto, kind of across the board, not just with staking. So staking actually is one of the areas that is still kind of growing, but in other areas it would definitely less so. I don't know. I'm assuming that's because of like bonds being so high and that sort of thing. But yeah, no, I mean, we're definitely seeing that across the board. But staking is one of those areas that is still kind of still growing, which is good.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see. I know that not to jump ahead, but I know when we talk about DevConnect here that there's two major staking conferences that are happening at it, and the attendance and the interest in those continues to grow quite strongly. So I view that as a very, very positive outlook. But let's take a look at the smart node. I know Joe has been working tirelessly and was able to release version 1.11.0 that, at least for the ODAO members, was a mandatory update for ODAO members because it included some of the rewards tree updates for the rolling records on rewards tree. But for most node operators, this upgrade had a number of client updates and new features. And I think most importantly on it, it now offers support for Hulsky, which is the new testnet. I guess it's the long-term testnet that is designed to replace the Prater network. And so, Lingers, I had a couple of questions about this. I actually got to say I'm a little bit behind in my my test node. In fact, my test node is offline at the moment, so I haven't used it. But can you just share with us a little bit about how it went and kind of deploying the contracts to Holsky and how it's working up? And then I have a couple of questions about Prater as well too.
Yeah, I think there's many such cases in terms of Prater. I think the participation rate on Prater is getting quite low. I think it's like 80% or something like that. Holsky, no, Holsky's good. Holsky is Atlas, so the latest release. So so it replaces Gurley and Prater as the testnet. This is mainly because Gurley and Prater are being deprecated, and so everyone's kind of like moving over to Holsky now as like a testnet for their testnet infrastructure. Now Holsky, I think the move wasn't event free. Well, first of all, Holsky didn't genesis, so it had to be regenesised. And then some of the clients had some issues that Joe worked through to get that kind of working. So I'm again not quite sure. Joe will kind of give us a bit more details at another time, but yeah, there was some kind of client issues around that stuff. So we had to kind of resolve those before we could actually launch to Holsky. Eventually, no, I mean, deploying the contracts and everything is pretty simple. We kind of got that down now. So yeah, we've deployed that. The ODAO is all set up on Holsky. And yeah, no, it's kind of like ticking along. We've got the faucets set up and everything's kind of like, you know, everyone's distributing RPL and Holsky ETH and all of that sort of stuff, so to allow people to test on Holsky. So no, it's good. I think that's going quite well so far. We're actually deploying a DevNet at the moment to support development efforts. Again, that's on Holsky. But yeah, that's gone quite well.
And then what happens to everybody with their test nodes on Prater? Should they just unplug them? I mean, just kind of let it kind of wither and die, or is there any reason that anyone in the Rocket Pool community should still be working or operating on Prater? What's your advice on that area?
I mean, we've been kind of shutting down because of the deprecation. The only instance where we might kind of go back to Prater or Gurley is if they do like the Cancun or Dancun or whatever you want to call it release. If they go to Gurley, which I would assume not. I would assume they would go to Holsky rather than Gurley because Gurley is being deprecated. But if they went to Gurley at that point, we might deploy a different DevNet. So but for any other people using that testnet, you know, we've sunset that testnet. So you should, if you want to be kind, you can exit your validators. But otherwise, yeah, you know, decommission that, and then if you want to spin up a Holsky a node so that we've got good participation on the Holsky network. That would be my advice, is to try and migrate over to Holsky. The great thing about Holsky, at least at the moment, is that it's a very small chain because it's only been alive for a certain amount of time. So it's actually super quick to sync up with Holsky, and so setting up a new node is actually really easy.
Oh yeah, that's really good advice, and yeah, and I guess it is going to be interesting to see when they get closer to the next release, right? And Dan Kuhn here as to, you know, they usually start rolling it out and some of the test nets in preparation for mainnet, and it'd be interesting to see if this is the last upgrade to Prater or if they skip it entirely. I can't say I've been following it that close to know what they're going to do in that area.
No, me neither. Actually, I need to kind of like go through some of the all core dev calls, but I don't even think they're at that point. They're still talking about dev nets, so we're not at that point yet, I don't think.
Yeah, I think they're on like DevNet 10 or 12, 13. It seems like every update I get on the you know, what's up in ETH2 or latest updates from Rhino staking, right? It's always or the all core devs updates. It's always the next version of the dev nets. But it is good because I do see occasionally they are finding some glitches and bugs, and I think the more they can work those out, the absolute better. Well, so the next item that's on here, I'm actually really excited about. In fact, I remember kind of rushing home from my evening out on Sunday because I really wanted to find out who you were hired. And I got to say, I'm absolutely ecstatic to see that Fornax, congratulations, Fornax, has been offered the job as one of the Golang developers. Langers, you want to talk a little bit about that? And how were you guys able to keep that a secret for so long?
Yeah, that was quite a long time, and thank you for keeping us honest. I think it wasn't every community call, but there was certainly a good few community calls where we got we have a question from Ken in trading. And I was like, oh yeah, this one's going to be win developer. So no, it did take a while actually, and I mean the great thing is that. Yeah, we went through like a proper recruitment process. Went out to market. People expressed interest in the role. We interviewed, and Fornax came out on top. Not really just because he kind of has rocket pool skills, but he actually really did kind of shine during the interview process. So no, that's been fantastic, and it is awesome for us because he can hit the ground running very quickly. So, and in actual fact, I should say that the update says Golang developer, but he's actually more general than that. So he'll actually be working on the smart contracts as well as the Golang stuff at the moment. We're still kind of like seeing where that kind of sits, but it's likely that he will kind of be across both, particularly in the short term, where we are kind of like pushed to get the contracts ready for audit, which is like 2 weeks away or something like that. So yes, 3.5 weeks. Sorry, 3.5 weeks away. So yeah, we're kind of like pushing to get the contracts ready. So he's actually helping out on the contracts at the moment. So that'll be good. So no, it's been perfect for us. Although it took us a while to get him on because he is so familiar with the code and rocket pool in general. Yeah, he's already kind of adding value. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I can't think of a better choice in the hire in terms of just his engagement in the community over the years that he's been in, his willingness to help in the support channel immensely, as well as he many people don't know, but he did a lot of work in the Grafana dashboard. I think a lot of the new version was due to a lot of his contributions and cleanup on there. So I think it's going to be absolutely great to see what he does for Rocket Pool over the coming months ahead. I think it's just absolutely fabulous. I saw in here you also mentioned that there's still, I guess, the possibility of one more junior developer being onboarded, perhaps in early new year. Anything you can share on that?
Yeah, I think it will be early new year. I don't think we have an official date yet, but it will be very early on in the new year. So yes, we actually went through the same kind of like hiring process. There were a couple of junior developers in there that were quite impressive, and we kind of bounced around the idea of having like a junior dev on board. So yeah, so we've decided to actually hire one of those developers. I think it's all gone through negotiation and all that sort of stuff now. So and then now it's just basically waiting for them to kind of like come on board. But yeah, that's going to be really, really exciting. The person that we're hiring is extremely enthusiastic and is really looking forward to joining the team. So yeah, that's going to be a very good addition.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Well, I guess it's another thing for me to keep bugging you with every day. Win the junior buyer. So yeah, okay, I'm looking forward to that. I saw in here that they had some information in the biweekly about the work on Houston, and I happened to catch today's rocket fuel. And WAC was talking about, I guess, a recent discussion in there that came about in maybe the trading channel with, I think it was Aragon, if I recall it correctly from today, about the PDAO voting. And I know that was one of the key aspects for the Houston upgrade, was to allow that kind of on-chain voting with the unique voting structure that Rocket Bull has with staked RPL. You want to talk a little bit about that and kind of what your thoughts are about its inclusion in Houston and kind of what the plans are?
Yeah, so obviously with the PDAO voting thing, so that was a priority that came out of the prioritization process with the PDAO and the community in general, and so we've been working on that. We kind of assessed a few different options, a few different solutions to the problem. The issue is there is actually some really good tooling out there for voting if you follow a particular path. If you there's like the government contracts and all this sort of thing that is becoming like a de facto standard, and then you have Aragon as well, which is their own thing, but they have this massive amount of tooling around their stuff. So we were quite keen to reuse stuff and rather than building, and so we assessed those things. The issue is that a lot of those rely on straight token voting, and the way that Rocket Pool works is not that. So we kind of considered, okay, so should we bring up maybe changing the way that we do voting? At the time, we were kind of like, actually, that's going to be. First of all, we like the way that the voting is done, in the sense that it is unique, and it does stop unaligned actors, which is a big. I think Vitalik posted about the problems of token voting, and one of the main problems with token voting is unaligned actors coming in and not adding any value to the protocol, but just buying up the governance token and steering votes. So that's something that the current system actually stops. So we wanted to keep that anyway, and so we thought, okay, how can we work around that? We tried to fit it into the existing solutions, but it just wouldn't work. Essentially, the issue that we have is that we need to calculate the total amount of vote power, and with Rocket Pool, that can't really be done. We have to do that off-chain, essentially. We have to do that off-chain and kind of like post it. Dave came up with a good idea of doing it when somebody posts a proposal, and then it kind of went from there. So we have essentially a way of it's kind of like an optimistic PDAO voting system. So people raise a proposal. So this is, when I say that somebody, I mean like anybody can raise a proposal. You have to put up a bond, but anyone can raise a proposal. And then that proposal gets, it has a challenge period, and where we assess the essentially how much stake is being calculated, or and what the total voting power is being calculated. We just check those off. When I say we, I mean like every node operator that opts into this process can check that and challenge that at any time. And so in that way, it's kind of like an optimistic foolproof sort of system. Once it goes through that challenge period, then it's voted on. The proposal is voted on by the PDAO, and it either passes or fails. So that's definitely we've taken a little bit of time to get there, but I think that's a very good mechanism, and it's one that actually I think we will try to export to other people, because this calculation off chain, essentially voting schemes are going to get, not necessarily more complicated, but they, at some point you have to, you probably have to do it off chain. In some of these more kind of robust voting schemes, you're going to need to do stuff off chain. And so with this process, it's possible to kind of do that. So we'll try to kind of export that as much as possible. But yeah, it's a great system. We're very happy with it. We are kind of like tweaking the performance and stuff of it at the moment to make sure that it's really sound. But we're very happy with how the kind of like PDL voting system is looking.
Okay, and then remind me, I guess maybe as a follow up to that, in Houston, I was looking back at my notes here, and I think Houston has three major components to it, right? The PDAO voting that we just talked about, the creation of an RPL withdrawal address that could be separate from your ETH withdrawal address, and then a feature called stake ETH on behalf of a node, right? The latter two, I think, are designed to allow kind of these well marriages, or to allow protocols like NodeSet to operate on top of the Rocket Pool protocol. Are those the three major elements as we're getting closer to Houston, or is there anything else that we're missing?
No, that's correct. So they're the main ones. There are a few kind of like more quality of life things for basically for smart node developers. So for Joe and for Fornax, there's some quality of life things around changing some things from block to time and that sort of thing. But apart from that, no, they're the three kind of like big features. As you said, it's the PDL voting thing, the RPL withdrawal address, and then stake ETH on behalf of.
And then kind of recognizing you said earlier that we're about maybe 3.5 weeks away from the first audit. Does that mean most of the programming and code is done on this thing? When are you guys going to kind of code block this for the audits? Is that coming up? And I guess there was a question early on of just about how much work Keen has to do on these on the PDAO voting, but am I guessing it's mainly done by now?
So the PDAO voting is basically done. The RPL withdrawal is basically done. We're in the process of like coding out the RPL withdrawal address. We noticed a couple of things we needed to add to the spec. So we're changing the RPIPs to reflect that. So we'll add those in, but they're quite relatively small changes to the RPL withdrawal address. So those two things are basically done. The stake ETH on behalf of is not done yet, but that'll be the next thing that Kane kind of works on. As I said, we're deploying this DevNet. Joe has already been doing like integration work on the smart node side for all of those features, and so he'll kind of like finish that off over time. And then we'll be able to start testing that on a DevNet, hopefully kind of next week, or at least testing out the PDAO voting thing on the testnet DevNet next week. And so, yeah, so there's still a little bit of development work to be done on the contracts themselves, but we are looking quite good in terms of timing and that sort of thing. Yeah. So we will start that kind of like process. We want to open the DevNet up once we've done our own internal testing, just to make sure that it meets, actually does what it says on the tin. We will kind of try to open up the DevNet as early as possible to allow people to participate in the testing of that. So I think that's going to be good, but we'll try and do that as early as possible. Probably around the time the audits happen, so in about 3.5 weeks or something, we might open the DevNet up so that other people can start testing it and giving us feedback and that sort of thing.
I see. And then would that be on a separate DevNet, or would that be on Holsky, or how would that work?
So it's on Holsky, but it's a different deployment of Rocket Pool. So within the smart node, you'll just have to, it'll just be like a DevNet option rather than the testnet option, but it'll actually use Holsky underneath.
Okay, interesting. Now, the other topic in the biweekly here was that there's a lot of other, even though we're focusing a lot on Houston and the upcoming audits, there's a lot of other R&D topics that are going on, including a new website. I've seen a couple of previews of that. I know some people have in there. I guess we're waiting on some final images to come through. The staking site performance update, improvements to the rETH calculator. Do you want to talk about these other things here and kind of when they're going to be released? What's kind of the plan around those?
Yeah, so the website we're aiming for kind of around DevConnect. Those images are being dropped in at the moment. That's going quite well now, so we're pretty happy with where that is. But we're kind of gradually putting those images in. So that's about around DevConnect. DevConnect.
DevConnect, yeah.
Too many devs. And then the staking site performance updates. I mean, that's good. Nick is always doing that. He's always finding new ways of tweaking the performance on the staking site. The rETH reward calculator has been going quite well. I mean, he's been kind of a bit distracted with other things, but he's kind of been finishing that off. And then there's been the thing that's been kind of mostly is a lot of DevOps work. So there's with this kind of like new test nets and all of that sort of thing, and with Holsky being a bit of a pain at the beginning, there's been a lot of kind of like DevOps work to be done from that perspective. But no, it's good. We're in a much better spot now, so we're pretty happy.
Okay, and then just kind of thinking things are going to happen. I mean, probably a little bit of a slow period as we start to go into the holiday season a little bit. And when the audits come, I know a lot of your shift is moved towards supporting the audits. But, I'm optimistic that Dan Kuhn will come out, maybe towards the end of Q1 24. Maybe I'm a little optimistic there. But, but anyhow, that doesn't leave much time for kind of the plans for Saturn. How are those shaping up? Or you feel like we're on track for a successful launch shortly after Dan Kuhn with Saturn, or is Saturn proving to be more difficult than was first conceived?
No, I think Saturn is going to come quite a bit after Dan Kuhn. We're not really kind of like tying it to that release. There's still a bit to. I think the main thing is we're trying to focus on Houston to kind of like get that out. But from a design perspective, Kane has already done a lot of the kind of like megapool design and all of that sort of thing. So that will be quite easy. The hardest part will be this discussion and analysis and then sort of the governance stuff around the bonding curve changes. That's probably the hardest part of the thing, or at least the thing that might take a little bit more time. But in terms of the actual kind of like code, I mean, we also have, it's also like locking down what scope is going to be in there as well. Like we've also got the kind of like the EL penalty system, which we've kind of done partial design work on that needs to be kind of like fleshed out a lot more. So Saturn has got quite a bit, to do on it. But as soon as Houston is, in a good spot, which will be very early, next year, well, not even that, end of this year, really, we can shift the focus onto Saturn, and then that will move, very, very quickly. So I don't see that being a huge issue in terms of like timing and that sort of thing, but we're not necessarily targeting, unlike like the merge and that sort of thing, where there was quite an impetus to have it done very soon after the Ethereum release. There's not as much of an impetus, although obviously we do want to leverage that as much as possible. But we're also very mindful of the fact that the Saturn scope is very big, and it's one of the things that it's almost like a rocket pool V2. So we also want to kind of make sure that we get that right. So that's why we're kind of not promising it immediately after Dan Kuhn.
Oh, I like that. You're starting something rocket pool V2. I do like that. kind of branding on Saturn because of the extensiveness of it. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense that it's not as much time dependent as perhaps the post-merge upgrades were. And then last but not least, before we go on to governance, any word on the Medium article?
Yeah, it is being worked on. It is being worked on. So yes, it is being worked on.
Yeah, I think we've used every adjective. Soon TM, very soon. I guess.
Yeah, all of those. All of those.
Okay, perfect. So on to governance. Kind of curious your take on here. We just completed the voting on RPIP4. If you haven't been following along, I guess as part of a couple of upgrades and perhaps a little bit of inconsistency in our language, we never really made it clear what the voting eligibility was for nodes that fall under a 10% collateralization. And I understand, I haven't had a chance to pull up the website, but from reading the Discord here, I understand that the voting has closed. This was kind of a dual vote in which, because of the uncertainty, we did it one way with only nodes greater than 10% voting, and then another way in which all nodes were voting. And both of those reached the same conclusion that in kind of, I guess, a go-forward basis here, all nodes will be granted voting access regardless of their percent collateralization. Let me just see if I'm understanding that correct, Langers, and if you had any comment on it, or if the team has given any comment on it.
No, I mean, it's I think it's great that we've got it kind of like sorted out. It's kind of holding up a lot of things, and we can now kind of like move on and kind of get some of the other stuff voted on. It was kind of holding us back a little bit, so I'm definitely glad that that's kind of wrapped up, and we have a decision, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think so. And I had shared just kind of personally, I thought originally, I think there's a little bit of swing voting going on there, as I think the conversation kind of pivoted and matured a little bit from first what was maybe a vote on the resolution of the initial intents to just more, I think, a discussion going forward. What is it we as a community want to establish in there? And I think that's one of the reasons we saw a large consensus start to form at the end there. But you did mention exactly that there's a number of votes coming up, and Mav and the biweekly included a couple of them. I guess the first one is there were some budget updates that need to be done, I guess, due to some transactions that happened late and some changes. We didn't quite disperse the correct amount of funds to the IMC and GMC. And I think there's a proposal here, if I'm understanding it correctly, to make like a one-time correction in payments due to help in that correct proportionality of PDAL funds.
Yeah, I think that I think we kind of miscalculated the some of the funds, so this kind of like sets that straight, which is good.
Yeah, it looks like a little bit of a cleanup work. So hopefully that one isn't. It's still one that has to go to vote, and I believe right now there's a settlement poll. If you look at the biweekly, there's a link to it, and in there, Val has created a settlement poll that seems to be very much that is ready to bring to a vote. The next one up is, believe it or not, and I was kind of surprised this one on myself here, is that it's now been a year since we last kind of elected the GMC, the Grant and Management Committee members. And they've already had a period of nominations, and many of the folks that were nominated have all given nominee statements in the forum. And so pretty soon those individuals are going to be on a ballot for election. So I do encourage you to take a look at the link and read everybody's nomination statement. And I was really glad to see just a tremendous interest of people applying to serve on there. Many of folks that are very active in the community, but this would be kind of their first time actually serving in an official capacity, serving the PDAO. So it looks like it's going to be a really, really good election state for everybody.
Yeah, it's great to see the whole process working.
Yeah. Governance in action. It's working in there for it. And, certainly being a GMC member myself, and this last time, I will tell you, it is a commitment. And so I'm very glad for everybody that kind of recognizes the amount of time it's going to take and is willing to serve and give to the community. So kudos to everybody who's in the running for that. Another one that come up is a grant awardee. This is OpenUX, is provided an update about their ongoing research project. And I don't know, Mav or Langers, if you want to comment on this, but one of the things I know the GMC had looked at was this proposal that tends to do a little bit of a research paper or research data production. I guess it's still going to be a paper product out of it that helps us understand a little bit more about our node operators, because it still continues even to this day to be one of the challenges to Rocket Pool is that we tend to be node operator limited. And the thought among the GMC in approving this was that if we could understand some of the research and factors that make a node operator, it might help us to be able to attract and recruit more node operators.
Yeah, there's a few more details about this in a very small few, but anyway, in the protocol ping on Discord. Essentially, it's more just a heads up that the process is underway. And yeah, I suppose, as you say, node operators are crucial to Rocket Pool, and being permissionless, and in many cases, if operators choose to, they can be fairly anonymous. That makes it a little bit difficult in terms of understanding people, their priorities, even people that or node operators that do engage a little bit more might have views that they, for whatever reason, don't, or they're not comfortable in sharing more openly than others. So this is a great kind of scientific approach to gathering some data that could be quite useful. Important call out is that there is going to be a very short survey which will be made available soon, TM, likely within a week. And if you are willing to complete that, it would help out a lot. I understand that there may also be an option for some more kind of in-depth interview style questions too. But yeah, we'll make sure that everyone stays up to date with that project as it continues to progress.
Yeah, and thank you very much for kind of mentioning the survey. I think the more data they have, just the better value this report is going to be to the PDAO and the community as a whole. So if you're listening to this and have a few moments, open up the biweekly, find the link, and go in and take a look at that survey. There's a new RPIP coming out, I guess a draft RPIP. This is RPIP 34, and this is an interesting one. I believe it or not, I wasn't very much familiar with it until I read the biweekly in preparation for today's call. But it's by a gentleman, Along for Wisdom, who has been a new person in Rocket Pool, but has been incredibly active and just absolutely valuable, I think, and cleaning up and helping guide some of our governance decisions. I think he and Val have certainly contributed greatly to this process and organizing a lot of our RPIPs. And this proposal is to create kind of a methodology to maybe help focus where the PDAO should be doing its work in terms of advancing the protocol and governance creation. It's perhaps maybe a little bit of way to put input into into what maybe we might describe a little bit more as a haphazard approach or just a crisis of the day approach to some of our governance. But Mav or Langers, have you had a chance to take a look at this, and any thoughts on it?
I haven't yet, actually. I've been doing. I think we commented a little bit on the areas that is it Gov Alpha can kind of like help out with. So I commented a little bit on that. But I'm looking forward to kind of like going through it, actually.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of kind of the road mapping you were doing with the dev team about trying to spitball a lot of things that are out there and try to find a way to prioritize those or reach consensus about what are the more important ones. And I very much support the ideal of that could be really helpful in focusing those that are spending time working in the PDAO in terms of what the community really sees as a priority that we should be working on first. So probably in retrospective, it was probably a really good idea that we should have done a while ago. But I'm very glad for Long for Wisdom's kind of observation on that and drive at proposing something like this forward here.
Yeah, documentation is usually the last thing that kind of like happens. But no, I mean it's good. I think it makes things more transparent, makes things easier to get into. Onboarding new people about the processes and that sort of thing. It makes a lot of sense in terms of encouraging participation as well, which is what we want in the long run.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. There's also the latest PDAO treasury that's available. Vakalaka has produced that on there, and so there's a link to it in the biweekly. And the other interesting thing that came up here, it hasn't gotten a lot of traction, and I was kind of surprised because I thought it was just a really excellent post. And I know in Discord we're having a lot of conversations about tokenomics, and especially tokenomics maybe in advance of mega pools and trying to align them. I know that Nashua has a lot of thoughts on the area, as well as other leaders in the community. But Nethermind, that actually, I guess, has a research arm in addition to the Node client group. I guess they're a fairly large company. Has done a really comprehensive tokenomics review, and they posted it in the forum. And there's a link to it in the biweekly. And I would encourage, out of all the things to go click on and find, is really look at this one. I think they had done quite a lot of work in the tokenomics, and we're proposing some interesting maybe changes or enhancements to it. I don't know how well it aligns with some of the community thought in there, but I thought it could be an excellent point for discussion and kind of further debate about how to refine and optimize some of our tokenomic models.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like stuff that I think a lot of it happens behind the scenes, but it's not as kind of like formal. So yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's a good. It's a good kind of write up. It's a good proposal. So go have a look. I mean, I think we're going to have them on like a Twitter space at some point to kind of like talk through some of it. But yeah, no, it's worth a read from that perspective. They put a lot of work into it.
Let me just see if I can find the date that we'd penciled in. It could be as soon as what's the date? 25th October. Just over a week from now. We might have a call with them just to chat through some of these themes, either as a guest on one of the community calls or as a separate call. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I think that would be excellent. It would actually be kind of fun maybe one of these days to do a little virtual summit where we have a couple of the big thought leaders and perhaps on a topic like tokenomics come and give a series of presentations over a couple of hours or something like that. And, it could be done maybe virtually, because I think this is going to be one of the more challenging topics ahead is changes to tokenomics, right? Because it can get either a very complex or very, I don't want to say controversial, but very, very debated in there. And so, but it is great to kind of see the amount of interest in all of these things and the number of ideas and different methodologies and approaches to take.
Although number has gone up. So as Hodger said, do we need to fix the tokenomics? Yeah, congratulations, we fixed the tokenomics.
Yeah, I suppose that is true. that's in there. Yeah, but ain't broken, don't fix it, right? The last one on here is one that maybe we could spend a second talking about, which was discussions about the future team funding. And I know this has been one of the things that's kind of interesting as we look at kind of the growth of the protocol from maybe an initial startup phase and seed funding phase to more a DAO facilitated protocol, right, that now has responsibilities in paying for the dev team. And I know that one of the big changes to happen this year was a adjustment to the ODAO remuneration, right? That's in kind of a phased decline of payments to the ODAO members. And the reason I mention that most particularly here is the team was running 4 ODAO nodes and using that as one of the funding mechanisms to support the now ever-growing size of the team. And I know that I haven't had a chance to kind of read through these discussions in here, but Langers, any comments on that about what you would like to see the PDAO support the team or mechanisms, or any commentary on this?
Yeah, I mean, we go into it a little bit in the dev funding kind of chat, but really it's kind of like so obviously, as you said before, we were kind of reliant on the ODAO payments. That's actually being reduced quite quickly. So the idea there is to replace that with a PDAO funding mechanism, which we've already started. So the first kind of like payment was voted on a little while ago. So now it's kind of like getting a regular cadence going. So because previously it was set for 3 months, which we're coming up to the end of that 3 months now. What we'd kind of like is to do like a 12-month cadence of approvals with a kind of quarterly reporting on the roadmap and that sort of thing from us. So that seems to have good agreement on those things. The reason why we're saying about a 12-month cadence is mainly to do with keeping a certain amount of autonomy. So it's good that the PDAO kind of essentially controls team funding, but we also need a certain amount of autonomy to be able to kind of like make decisions and to advise the protocol to a good degree. So that's why kind of that's in there. And so stop any sort of micromanagement kind of going on. With the we're kind of like talking about the amounts and that sort of thing at the moment. Currently at the current kind of price point for RPL, we are essentially not we're essentially running at a loss, which we can kind of manage because we have quite good treasury management skills or kind of processes in place. So we're actually okay in terms of that, but we do need to kind of figure out what that price level is and all that sort of thing. So we've kind of suggested like a 5%. So at the moment we're paid, I think it's something like 3.3% of RPL inflation, which I think is quite a good deal, really. And then we've kind of said that we should increase it to 5%, which will enable us to be break even at this point. But obviously, as the protocol grows, we'll also be able to grow with that. Or as kind of like we come into a more kind of bullish market, we can obviously grow with that, sensibly grow. We're never going to grow like super quickly. That's not something that we believe is a good thing, mainly because we don't like to hire and then fire. We prefer to kind of keep a solid team and talent. So that's definitely one thing to consider. But we also like to keep our keep lean anyway, so that we're effective for the PDAO and the protocol as a whole. So yeah, so there's a few things to unpack in there. I definitely go through and read it if you want to kind of like get the gist. But yeah, there's some good discussion going on.
Okay, and then how can the community help in this matter besides reading the conversation, adding commentary, either support or debate, and then what's the next step after some consensus has been reached? Is this one that eventually will go to PDAO voting as well too?
Yeah, so probably what will happen is as part of so once we've kind of like come to some sort of consensus within that discussion, that will be formulated into some sort of RPIP, and then that will go for voting. So that we want to do reasonably quickly, but obviously we want to make sure that there's a good amount of discussion and everyone's kind of like comfortable with the direction. So we'll so as many eyes as we can on that discussion is really good.
Okay, excellent. Well, let's move on to integrations a little bit here. One of the first topics in here is that the IMC has been working with PancakeSwap with an rETH position rewards now available via an improved UI UX in Merkle. Mav, you want to talk a little bit about this? Believe it or not, I'm probably one of the last people on Earth that hasn't used PancakeSwap yet to do a DEX exchange.
Well, I'm with you there, at least in terms of ETH. I do recall back in the day doing something on some other L1s, which we won't mention. Nobody needs to know anything about that. But yeah, as far as the topic of this integration, it sounds a little complicated and potentially is. Essentially, the point we want to get out is that this is an incentivized position, and the incentives still exist. There's just a different mechanism in terms of claiming them. So I think there may have been some confusion where people thought for some reason incentives had paused and they pulled their position as a result. No, it's business as usual. There's just an easier way to claim these rewards. Essentially, it's avoiding the need to actually stake your LP token to do so. There are a couple of tweets linked to from the bi-weekly update that can explain this. In particular, the PancakeSwap one itself has a thread with some steps and links, which is very straightforward. So there's something that you are doing or used to be or are considering providing liquidity via PancakeSwap, that would be the best place to go to find out all about Merkle and how that works.
Okay, interesting. I see that Ledger Live now supports rETH liquid staking. From somebody who's used Ledger, Ledger Live is kind of their maybe it'd be similar to like MetaMask Portfolio, but it's their web-based kind of interface that allows you to buy, trade, and sell a lot of crypto. And so it's great to see that it's got native support now for rETH liquid staking.
Yeah, this one was a bit of a soft launch. We're still chatting with Ledger. There's likely to be a bit of an announcement, albeit it'll be a little bit late at that point. But yeah, some point in the future. I guess just a good example of how Rocket Pool and rETH is continuing to be really deeply integrated into the entire ecosystem. Something that had been talked about for a long time, Ledger, and then also something that required a little bit of work on our behalf. I believe it was Kane who was doing that to get everything plugged in, and it's all working now. So yeah, great to see.
Yeah. Now the next couple here are kind of new ones to me. I guess there's a layer one called UMI. I guess it's an EVM compatible layer one, and it is now supporting rETH. Do you know anything about that? And how do they do that? They just port it over themselves? Is that how something like this works?
I know the bare minimum about this, and it's worth reiterating at this point that, of course, a lot of things in this industry are permissionless, and this includes the protocols and even chains in this case that decide to integrate rETH. So this is something that's been done entirely by these projects and protocols themselves, no input from us. As a result, it's not something we would want to comment on in terms of the long-term sustainability, viability, etc. I think there's two main points here. The first one is that if this is a space where people are perhaps already involved, it is providing them with a potential opportunity to find out about lock-up pool and rETH. And yeah, the second point is just that reminder to, as always, whether it comes to a centralized exchange or a decentralized exchange, just make sure you do a bit of research first. And yeah, another example, just like Ledger, I guess, slightly different, but rETH is continuing, to be accepted across the ecosystem, both in terms of the established players and some potentially novel new applications. So yeah, we'll keep an eye out to see if there's any traction here. But as we've seen so far, rETH tends to be by far mostly active on mainnet, and then following that, a few smaller number of more established L2s. Don't necessarily see that changing very much for the foreseeable future. But if anyone is already playing around on these other chains, including we've got Umi and Evmos, these EVM compatible other L1s, yeah, maybe that's relevant to someone in the audience.
Yeah, and I guess there's there's a couple here, right? And the next one says that I guess there's a DeFi opportunity for rETH holders on I guess it's Evmos, EVMos. I don't even know what EVMos is.
Yeah, not sure on the pronunciation there either, but it's essentially these two, from my understanding, are quite similar. They are other L1s that are EVM compatible. So yeah, maybe more appealing this one to some of the more experienced DeFi DGens out there. Yeah, something I might want to check out.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess the more I keep learning about DeFi, I'm just always amazed at just the size and scope of it, and the number of players out there that continue to grow. I guess that's very bullish for maybe the growth of the space quite a bit. There are two other integration posts that you included in the biweekly here. One is Davos created some content about an rETH strategy on Arbitrum. And I think Arbitrum was maybe one of the first layer 2s that we ported over to. Maybe it was Optimism or Arbitrum. I can't remember back in the day. Anything you want to comment about this post?
Yeah, so this is probably a good example of this protocol, Davos, kind of outlining the steps to create a DeFi strategy, which even with the 6 steps that they've shown in their post, still potentially a little bit confusing. There's an interesting flywheel flow, they call it, diagram further down as a kind of reply tweet in their thread. But yeah, it just shows a potential use case for rETH on Arbitrum, using that as collateral to borrow DUSD, which is their stable coin, and then using that stable coin elsewhere in the world of DeFi. They're in this case using it in a balancer pool, and then receiving rewards and staking that via Aura. So Balancer Aura is probably something that may be familiar to some liquid stakers in the audience. It is a combo that has worked quite well for the IMC for quite some time in terms of, to be clear, not in this example, but separate, but still using those protocols to provide liquidity for rETH. So whether or not you just have an interest or you're looking to kind of get more involved and see what options are out there, it's a good breakdown from Davos to kind of clearly outline the steps. In some cases, this kind of strategy could be automated. There are a couple of protocols out there that do that sort of thing, but not always. So yeah, if you have assets on Arbitrum, this may be of interest to you.
And then last but not least is you included a mention here that there's a new restaking protocol that's built on eigenlayer that supports rETH. This is one by Astrid Finance. And it's interesting to me in that, eigenlayer is very much in its infancy, yet there's just growing number of protocols mentioning that they're building on eigenlayer or including it in there. And I always, I'm always trying to wrap my head around how much of it is just a future commitment to do so, and how much of that relay or that Oracle assurance is already built into eigenlayer. Anything you want to comment about with Astrid Finance and their restaking protocol?
Yes, so I definitely agree with you there, and the main reason why I put restaking in quotations there in the biweekly. So it seems that this is another case of permissionless composability. This protocol accepts deposits from 3 assets: rETH, and then staked ETH from Lido and Coinbase. Essentially what this protocol does is then takes the tokens, and it seems via eigenlayer, there, I guess you could call it a testnet mechanism at this stage, will stake it for you. In terms of the, restake it for you. In terms of the utility right now, well, first of all, when it comes to any kind of opportunities that we highlight during the biweekly, certainly not an endorsement or a recommendation. As far as I can tell, there's not necessarily so much in terms of a use case or utility here. It's probably more interesting for someone who may want to kind of keep an eye on the whole idea of restaking as, well, I guess as a strong narrative that exists now, but something that has potential to be significant in the future. And of course, always good to see, in terms of the assets being supported, rETH being grouped in there in terms of a kind of tier 1 liquid staking asset. So yeah, this one, not necessarily something to get excited too much about right now. If you are curious though, there is a pretty comprehensive thread that is linked to from the bi-weekly update where you can read some more.
Yeah, interesting. One of my goals of DevConnect that we'll talk about a little bit later on here is to actually kind of learn a little bit more about the eigenlayer ecosystem and some of its integrations and implications to the liquid staking protocols that are out here. But let's move on to the media and marketing section here. And Langers, it looks like you were on the speaker circuit quite a bit here. I guess you were interviewed for Defiant News, and then you participated in a community call by SSV. And I usually try to listen to as many of the Rocket Pool contents that are out there, but I got to say that last one with SSV is one that I haven't heard. Do you want to share anything about that call and maybe just a short recap of some of the major points of it?
That is a great question. And now I think we obviously touched on kind of like Rocket Pool and DBT in general. I think I was saying about the fact that we're kind of looking at this whole squad staking thing, and that there is kind of like an opportunity for Rocket Pool node operators to engage in the SSV network as a node operator within the SSV network. So kind of those things. At the moment, we're putting together like a grant proposal to kind of have that integrated into the smart node. But yeah, that's the kind of things that are kind of going on within that thing. I think we were talking I can't remember anything. I can't remember what else we were talking about now. Sorry, it was a little while ago, so my brain's gone.
Yeah, I have to say, when I was collating this, that SSV call was one example where I saw it and thought, wasn't that like a month ago or more? But no, apparently it was on the 12th of October. Yeah, it could have fooled me there, but yeah, Langers says it's, I guess this common theme with DBT is just understanding exactly how it should apply in the case of Rocket Pool, because when you already have a protocol that is fully permissionless, it's a little bit different than another use case where it's been kind of used as a potential way to help decentralize existing protocols or validator sets that are more permissioned than Rocket Pool.
Yeah, no, it is kind of an interesting thought experiment to kind of think about, what value does DVT bring to Rocket Pool, and the use cases of it that are being used by other decentralized staking protocols may not necessarily be the same reasons to bring it into Rocket Pool. And so, I think it would be kind of interesting to have maybe like maybe one of these separate sessions, or a little virtual event to kind of have people share different perspectives on it, right? I know for one of the things that we always look at is our node attestation effectiveness, and perhaps there's a way with DVT to allow multiple nodes, similar to like this software called Vouch, to help the nodes choose correctly the head and the source and target of the blockchain, right? There might be a point for DVT in terms of making it more economically affordable by reducing the node operator commitment, right? Kind of do that squad staking, but then you run into the problems of, well, how do you form a squad, and how do you trust the other members of the squad? And so it's kind of a rabbit hole. You could spend a lot of time in the shower thinking about DVT and where its purpose lies in Rocket Pool. So yeah, I could definitely see that, and I know SSV has been a leader in kind of DVT technology for quite some time now. So maybe I'll have to go back and listen to that that call and see if there was any interesting thoughts that come out of it.
I mean, we're also trying to be as neutral as possible. SSV is definitely there's OBOR as well, so we want to kind of like give people options. I think in terms of the use case of node operators being involved in the SSV network, I think that's unique to SSV. But like the squad staking part is DVT in general. So I think we would probably like to support both protocol. If we're going to support squad staking, we would ideally like to support both DVT protocols in that sense, to give people options and keep that decentralization. People can control their own thoughts on which direction they want to use. So yeah, there's a few things to kind of unpack there. So, but there's a few things going on. But there's still kind of like discussions going on around that. In the long term, it probably isn't like a DVT isn't necessarily a major impact on Rocket Pool itself. But these kind of like extra things you can do with DVT is still interesting.
Yeah, interesting. And then down here, you'd mentioned that Istanbul planning is underway. I know, Mav, we've talked a little bit about this, and I guess there's going to just be a subset of the team attending this here. And I think you mentioned it was going to be Langers. You were going to have the opportunity to go. And Mav, anybody else from the team that we could expect to see there in Istanbul?
Yeah, Grant and Kane will also be coming along. It looks like so far we've got maybe, I think, 8 or 9 from memory community members. I'm guessing that would include you, Ken, who've indicated their presence. So with that in mind, I've already got a couple of ideas in terms of where we can all get together for a beer or a cup of tea or a bite to eat in Istanbul. So looking forward to that. And yeah, just seeing everyone on site at the two main events we'll be attending. The Staking Rewards Staking Summit first up, and then the Staking Gathering. And also, I think, did we... it's for the... Yeah, it's in that point there about the Nethermind Summit is the other DevConnect event that we'll be attending, and Langers will also be speaking at.
Yeah, Langers, can you tell us a little bit about that Nethermind Summit? It's interesting. I think that's going to be on Wednesday, right after the eStaker thing that happens Monday and Tuesday. But can you share anything more about that and maybe what your talk is that you're presenting on?
I don't think it's a talk. I think it's a panel, actually. I can double check, but I'm pretty sure it's a panel on... It could be a liquid staking panel, I believe.
Hang on.
Yeah, I can.
Catch him at the decentralization panel.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I guess you've got some time to figure out what you need to talk on, right? At least you don't have to give a 60-minute presentation, right? Yeah.
Panels. I tend to. Panels are quite easy because you can, not completely, but you can almost just rock up. I do a bit of prep beforehand, but it's much easier. Talk's much harder because you have to prep your slides, go over them and repeat them over and over and over again until they sound right. But with at least panels tend to be a bit more freeform, so it's easier to prepare for those.
Yeah. And what's interesting is you would think yet another staking panel, there wouldn't be much interest, but I've continued to see at least the last permissionless conference I was at. It was very well attended. I think people very much love not only the format, but they can't get enough talk about staking, like you alluded to earlier. Not only is it kind of growing in this kind of bear market, but it seems to be the exciting interest that still keeps people wanting to hear more about it. The other thing I'll mention briefly here is in the protocol channel, there's a great discount if you are going to DevConnect, coincidentally or perhaps intentionally, just the days right before it, the Friday and Saturday before DevConnect is the Staking Summit, which is a little bit separate than some of the DevConnect activities. They do require tickets. The tickets to that are normally pretty expensive for a crypto conference ticket, but they have an excellent discount that I believe they've afforded the Rocket Pool community here. That gives you about 90% off their ticket price. And I got to say, I've looked at their lineup and seen a number of not only speakers, but they have an app for their attendee list, and it's basically everybody who seems to be anybody in the staking environment is going to that. So I think I'm just as excited about that as I am the eStaker presentation on Monday and Tuesday. So just if you're thinking of going, certainly use the discount code that Rocket Pool has. The other thing in media here is Aave is proposing to diversify their protocol holdings and use some of their treasury ETH to take 100% rETH position. Mav, any comments on that?
Yeah, so there's been a little bit of talk over the past, I guess, couple of months now in terms of DAOs utilizing their treasury to stake it and help to secure Ethereum, but also to do so in a diversified and decentralized manner, or if they are already doing that to increase the diversity, the decentralization of what they're already doing. To be clear, this example from Aave, they're talking about the next, I suppose, amount of ETH or next tranche that they have wanting to stake, and then that is being proposed to be a 100% rETH position. We're not talking about Aave's treasury only being in rETH, but that the kind of next installment is going to have that emphasis on choosing a highly decentralized liquid staking token. So great to see some support there from Aave.
Yeah, and I think it's great. A lot of the advocacy that I've been seeing come around both crypto Twitter and some of the Discord channels, really petitioning DAOs to diversify their liquid staked tokens, and perhaps maybe even a little bit of divestment out of Lido to help keep it below the 33% threshold criteria. So this is great to see the interest in rETH, and I'm kind of hoping that the protocol can continue to ingest these fairly large purchases without adding too much of a premium to the cost of rETH. So this is excellent. Another milestone was passed here that I think is pretty impressive. Am I reading this right? That half of all the RPL tokens that are out there are actually staked now, with now totaling more than 10 million RPL tokens staked. Is that correct?
Yeah, the percentage had been hovering around 50% for a little while. I think it had crossed it briefly and dipped back down, but certainly that total number staked in terms of 10 million RPL tokens, that is a new milestone. So yeah, that is great to see. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk recently about RPL and staking thereof. But regardless, and with the market being the way that it is, we're still seeing that stake holding up, which is great.
As we get to the final post in this week's biweekly, one says here that Rocket Pool content was created by Miso Finance and Avado. I didn't have a chance to kind of click through on these things here, but what content did they produce?
So there's a couple of different examples of this from the last 2 weeks. Miso Finance have been very keen and on the kind of front foot to integrate RPL and rETH as early on in their protocol growth. We put up with them in Singapore actually, and they were on a community call quite a while ago. I believe that in terms of the use of their protocol, there is a bit of representation there from the Rocket Pool community in terms of the DeFi opportunities that they make available. They've been just outlining a few examples, both in terms of examples of how their platform can be used, but also talking about Rocket Pool itself as a protocol, which was really nice to see. The second one is Avado, so that is a node hardware option. My understanding is that it can be kind of characterized in terms of towards the higher end of a more powerful machine, but that's just talking about in a few tweets there how you can go about running a node, a Rocket Pool node, using their hardware. Then the next example that we have is Layer 3, which is one of these Quest platforms. There are a few out there with different names. You may have also heard of, for example, Galaxy. This is not a Quest that we've set up, but they've just decided to put out a bit of content talking about Rocket Pool, which is always nice, hitting a new audience there. Yeah, so 3 examples for the past couple of weeks. And then, yeah, we also had, I guess, from DForce on last week's community call, as we discussed at the start of this call, if anyone's just recently joined. Unfortunately, our guest for this call had to pull out at the last minute, but we do have a few lined up for the future calls. So that'd be great. And then,
yeah, and probably in hindsight, it was probably good that we had our special guest have to cancel at the last moment here, because it's actually been quite a packed bi-weekly update. You wouldn't think it. You think it'd be a little slower time, but I'm impressed here. And that brings us to kind of our last entry here, which is last but not least, that RPL is now listed on Finist. Is that, I guess I understand that's an exchange. I don't know if it's a SEX or a DEX that actually allows you to purchase the RPL token using euros, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, that's right. Seems to be a European exchange there. Again, in general, when it comes to exchanges, for a long time, Rocket Pool has never, Rocket Pool has never paid for these listings, and it just, I guess, is a representation of the attention that the RPL token in particular has been getting from the start of the year. We had a few of the big names a few months ago, and that's kind of trickled off into a long tail. Obviously, there are many exchanges out there, sometimes focusing on different countries or different regions, and then there's been a couple more over the past 2 weeks. So if you're familiar or you're willing to do a bit of research about, I do see in the replies they're talking about withdrawals. Obviously, that's something that's pretty important. Sending things into an exchange is usually not that difficult, but one day if you want to get things out, how that mechanism works, what kind of fees are involved, all these things are good to know. But yeah, we've got a couple of new places to potentially get your RPL.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of the prepared items in the biweekly update. Langers or Mav, are there any other topics that we haven't had a chance yet to cover in this biweekly that you'd like to share with the community?
No, I think we've covered a lot actually, which is awesome. Yeah, we're kind of like heads down, as said, on Houston. But there's a heap of stuff going on within the community and within the governance, so keep an eye out for that. Yeah, that's basically it.
Matt, anything from your perspective?
I guess that we will have some calls listed in the event section of Discord, along with some information on Istanbul if you're attending. That'll be out potentially later today, or maybe some tomorrow. Keep an eye out for that, and we'll see you either on the next call and/or in person in Turkey next month.
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to it. If any members of the Rocket Pool community are also going to be in Istanbul and you have a chance to attend any of these sessions, please come by and say hi. I'm looking forward to meeting, being reunited with many members of the community, but more importantly, meeting new members, especially from Europe and parts of the Middle East and Asia that may not have made it over here to ETH Denver. So. And I'm looking very much forward to seeing you both, Mav and Langers. And if we don't talk between here and there, we'll certainly have a chance to share a beer there in Istanbul.
I'm looking forward to it. Cheers, Ken. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Bye.